Ok, bonsoir tout le monde. Et les slides sont en anglais. Et comme de toute façon, je pense que vous allez le publier, je vais faire l'intervention en anglais pour ceux qui voudront partager. Alors, je vais partager mon, mon écran. Oops. All right. All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Agnès Ndiaye-Tunkara. I'm the coordinator of the French Heritage Language Program, a program of the Cultural Services of the French Embassy and the FACE Foundation, whose mission is to help French-speaking students recently arrived to the US from Haiti and Africa to make French an asset. I am very happy to be here today to talk about the program and see how we can revive it in Maine. I want to thank April for inviting me, and I want to thank Claire and Nathalie for being here. I am going to tell you a few things about me really quickly, tell you about the program, what we're trying to do and the impact we're having. And then I want to focus on, the French heritage speakers, these students that we are trying to serve. And with you, try to understand why we need to serve them in a specific way and what does it look like in the classroom, what does it look like from a school administrator point of view, and what does it look like for parents and community. And I'll share with you the resources that we at the FACE Foundation have accumulated over the past 15 years serving these students and this community. So I'm the program officer of the French Heritage Language. I am from Senegal. I'm also French and American. I am a fervent believer of bilingualism, and after 20 years in the US, I've raised 3 bilingual kids, and like I say, my superpower is being multilingual. I really believe it is a superpower. And although it comes with, not speaking perfectly all the languages, it gives me a very unique perspective on the world. And I think that's really what makes speaking more than one language, precious and wonderful. So the French Heritage Language Program was born in 2015. It's an initiative, like I said, from the Cultural Services of the French Embassy. And really the goal at the time, it started in New York City, was to help those students who very recently arrived from Francophone Africa and Haiti and find themselves in English-speaking high schools where there is no French offered. And all of a sudden, they lose the possibility to maintain their French, and they start losing the connection with their home. I have to say, these students are multilingual. They speak French, but usually when they're from Africa, at home, they will speak Wolof or Fulani. And if they're Haitian, they speak Haitian Creole, but they were schooled in French. So that linguistic asset is there. And the founder of the program, her name is Jane Ross, just felt like it was a shame for them to actually not capitalize on it and use it as an asset in this country for their college and for their school. So our program is an after-school program. It started like an after-school program. We go in several high schools in the city. We have partnership with the school, and they're usually just once a week. And we offer after-school programs, sometimes just focus on cultural aspect and maintenance of the language, but with the project-based pedagogy, because as you know, in a French heritage classroom, you have kids from very different levels. Some of them read, some of them just understand and speak. So projects are actually a very nice way to involve everyone and keep everybody engaged according to their level. In some schools, it's more academic. We have AP French class, and those classes happen during the day, during the school day, and the students prepare for the AP. They usually do very well. 75% of our students score a 3 or above. And first of all, it exposes them to a college level class in the US, which is new for them. And, they take pride in it. And it's a real motivation for, especially for the high school student, to continue the French, because all of a sudden they see that it can actually be an asset for college. Our teachers, once again, some of them are teachers, but a lot of them are just French speakers. Some of them are artists. Our project-based pedagogy allow us to, have this wide variety of staffing. We have a lot of resources that we have accumulated over the past 15 years. I'm going to share them with you. It's public, it's on our website. I invite you to go in there and find lesson plans and resources. We have videos, we have all kinds of things. That's what we've been using in the classroom. So it's a very unique program where we are engaging the students directly, but we do need the school to be on board. When we mainly work with school, but we can also work with the community centers. But usually our partners are the school who see a value in offering French classes and programs to these students. Families and community who believe that helping these students maintain their French is important for them, and the students obviously who also see the impact that they can have. So our mission is threefold, and I start with the social aspect because I think it's really important. When they arrive, these students can meet other students who actually share the same cultural background and also the same reality, are just young immigrants. And in American school, where people tend to stay in groups, it's a huge value. Yesterday I was in Brooklyn in a high school, and there was kids from Haiti, Togo, Mali, Guinea. Some of them have arrived as recently as 3 months ago, and they were just happy to be there. Some of them didn't speak French perfectly, but they would speak Haitian Creole, and you hear a lot of that in the classroom. So it's really a multilingual space. And so there is this social aspect that's very important. And obviously the language, our goal is to help them maintain or improve their French. And obviously the academic aspect, the principal that welcome our program all agree that when they strengthen their native language, their French skills, it helps them with English acquisition. And the students can see that too. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. It's more for people who are not familiar with the concept. It's a very wide concept. And that's why in our classroom, you have students who understand French but don't speak it. Some of them speak it, but they don't read it. There is a connection with the French, and that connection can be very tight, but it can also be a little bit more distant. If you take the student from Guinea who speaks Fulani at home, when he goes home with his parent, he speaks Fulani. But when he goes on the internet and chat with his friend, he's speaking in French, and he went to school in French. And he sees the value of French as he's coming into this country, trying to make it as a student, as a citizen, and then as a professional. So these students, as you know, on the spectrum of bilingualism, this continuum that's not, as you know, and as you can probably hear as I'm speaking, I say that I'm bilingual, but I'm somewhere on that continuum. And all these students are somewhere there. Obviously there is no perfect bilingualism. And I think it's important to keep in mind when we're talking with these students, the goal is not to make them perfect bilinguals, but to move them along this continuum. Obviously here in Maine, and we are specifically focusing on the one specific type of French heritage speakers. You have the Franco-American and Acadians in Maine who historically, who has this historical link with French. But as I was discussing with Claire here, you also have this recent Francophone immigrants from Africa. And in that sense, Maine is a beautiful illustration of what this Francophone space is, you know, people from very different background, but with the French as a common language. Why is it important to talk about these students and identify them and identify their needs? It's because they do have specific needs. I'm not going to come back on the benefits of bilingualism. We all here, I'm sure, aware and are big supporters of bilingualism. We know the benefits the studies have shown, what it does to the brain, and just on a more wider context, you know, when we speak several languages, you do have the ability more easily to talk and understand someone that's different from you. Apart from that, I think the identity aspect of the needs of the heritage speakers is very important. We're seeing it in the classroom. It's more than French. It's really, who am I in this new country with this language I speak? And with our students from Haiti and West Africa, it's even more complicated because colonialism is there and we cannot ignore it. But the practice has showed us that this language is part of their identity, and it's important to serve them in that matter. Diversity, equity, racial and social justice are also, as you know, a very important reason to serve these students. I'm just going to come back a minute on their specific needs. These students speak the language, but at different levels. So we need to boost their confidence. I think that's a very, very important, aspect of our role. And I had a lot of stories of students from Africa telling me that, you know, they're not comfortable speaking the language because in their country, people were very strict. There was a way of speaking. They were always corrected. And they have these stories about trying to speak their native language in the classroom and actually being scolded or punished. And so we're trying to break that to just have them have more confidence and make the language their own. We also have to focus on exposing them to a more formal register. Usually these students speak the language and they're very comfortable. But when it comes to writing and maybe making presentation at an academic level, that's where we see sometimes the difference, and that's where we need to work a little more. And also the different register, like I said. So on top of these very specific needs that these students have, everybody's talking about diversity these days, and I think that more than diversity, what we need is inclusion, because the diversity is there. What's more challenging is to allowing these students to be accepted the way they are, so with their culture, their level of French, and I think heritage language program are a beautiful way of saying to these students, we are actually interested in who you are, what you're coming from. It's bring something in the classroom, and you don't have to change anything. There is the equity aspect also of the debate, and this is an example from New York, but I'm sure in Maine we can have the same conversation. I am showing here with all these little dots the number of French speakers in New York City, in the Bronx, and in Brooklyn. So the purple is the Bronx, the yellow is Brooklyn, is Queens, the red is Manhattan, and the green is, no, the orange is Queens, and the green is Brooklyn. And the numbers are the different dual language programs, the public school that offer bilingual programs. And as you can see, they are concentrated in the island of Manhattan, where the Bronx, who has a lot of French speakers, don't have any of these public schools because the parents don't have time to advocate for these students. So they are not served. So those students also needs to be served because they are also Francophone, and that's where equity is really here about access. Racial and social justice are also topics that are talked about a lot these days, and for these students, and I'm going to start with the one in New York City, who tends to come from Africa and Haiti, so tends to be Black. And in America, there's actually an invisibility that comes with being Black. People just tend to think that if you're Black, you're African American, English is your primary language, and you're a monolingual family. You come from a monolingual family, where these students are actually multilingual and multilingual. And in that sense, our program also helped highlight their difference and their specific identity. Another reason why this is important today, there is also historically in Maine, linguistic discrimination have been important for French-speaking students. And for the students coming from Africa, there was also linguistic discrimination, more in the sense of, the kind of French they spoke, the accent they spoke, and the negation of their native language. So serving heritage speakers is really at the heart of all this conversation about culturally responsible education, racial and social justice, for all of these reasons. I'm going to go really quickly on the theory behind serving heritage speakers in the classroom. The National Heritage Resource Center in UCLA has done a lot of research on teaching heritage speakers with a focus on Spanish, just because it's one of the language that's most spoken here, but the principles stay the same. It's really important to know the students, know who they are in terms of culture and also their academic background. The kind of material we use is also important, and that's why in our classroom, if we're teaching kids who are coming from Africa or Haiti, we try to find content that can relate to them. In Maine, it would be the same thing. So the idea is to make the student feel engaged. It needs to be meaningful. Trying to find a way to address all the students with their different needs, knowing that these classes are very heterogeneous, is another challenge. And the designing curriculum that makes sense from a cultural and a linguistic perspective is also very important for these students because of their cultural background. You probably know this better than me. I'm actually not a teacher, but our students tend to have this global knowledge of the language, and teaching heritage speakers usually requires, instead of starting from the bottom where we do a lot of decoding and working on words and sentences, the approach would be more starting from the top and using the previous knowledge and mobilizing this knowledge in the classroom, and then trying to help them maybe master the things that they don't master. This is another slide on pedagogy, with the acknowledgement that these students sometimes have very different levels. So there is all the time this work of trying to find the balance between challenging the most advanced students so they're not bored, but not creating anxiety for the students who are not at the same level. And that's the challenge of all the French teachers who have heritage speakers in the classroom. The goals, the learning objectives are the same as for the other students, obviously. And this is just the ACTFL proficiency guidelines that language teachers use in the classroom to help the students improve their level. I'm just going to say a few things about the administration point of view in terms of serving the heritage speakers. It comes back to knowing the students, and that starts with having data, because sometimes, when we go in schools and we ask, do you have French speakers? Sometimes they tend to say no, because the language survey allows for one answer and the student answered Fulani and not French. So it's at the classroom level, but also at the school level just knowing this student, the country of origin is usually more helpful than the language they speak. And also the parents' expectation, because if we don't have the parents on board, I think it's harder to push this student to continue with the French. I'm sorry. Investing in authentic and culturally relevant classroom material. We talked about that at the classroom level, and the administration can definitely help for that. Trying to find teachers that actually represent what the student look like. It's another very important aspect. And when possible at the high school level, and we try to do it in New York City, presenting these students to the seal of biliteracy and the global seal to celebrate their assets, and also give them a little push for their academic future. I talked about parents' involvement, and this framework that was created by François Grain, he's actually from Switzerland, I think is a really good way to approach it. He identified for him the 3 important elements to have a successful language program. He talks about capacity, opportunity, and desire. And we tend to focus on capacity, which is helping the student develop their proficiency, and that usually happens in the classroom. And sometimes those resources are there. But when it comes to heritage speakers, there's 2 other important aspects: opportunity and desire, meaning if the student is learning or trying to maintain his French, but does not have the opportunity to use it in real life and see it as something important and appreciated and welcome, then it's very hard to motivate them. And which also leads to the desire, same thing, you know, the students have to find some kind of reward in keeping the language alive. And in that sense, I feel like the communities are very important. We need to make sure that they're on board, and then there is this desire to continue with the French, especially when it's not the first language that's spoken in the family. So I went kind of fast on all of those things because I really wanted to have time to talk to you a little bit about what we do and how we can help, depending on where you are. So the way the FACE Foundation work is that you know, we manage the program in New York directly, but when it comes to other territories, we usually try to identify either a community with a strong desire to start French classes for their children at the elementary or high school level, or a school that is interested in serving a population of French heritage speakers that are not served, or that has a French program, but a very small one, or a school district. And in New York City, we are actually an official vendor, an after-school program vendor. So we have the accreditation to go in schools and offer after-school programs, but the partnership can take all kind of, can take different forms. If you're a teacher and you have a group of students, and I'm thinking about Natalie, but she doesn't have enough, but if you ever have like a group of heritage speakers big enough in your classroom, in your French classroom, and you feel like they will be better served in a specific program. And we actually started a conversation with teachers at Portland High School, and I never can remember the name of the second one. Deering, yes. And they came to us saying, we have French 1, 2, 3, 4, we have AP class, but we have all these students from Africa and they don't really fit anywhere. You know, the understanding skills are much better than the students in the class. They need more work in certain aspects, and we would love to actually create French heritage speakers class. They had so we can help with that. And because we are connected to the foundation, you know, we usually provide financial resources you can ask for a little grant, and we'll cover the cost of the teacher if you find a teacher in the school who's willing to stay after school to do this, or if the school decides to offer this class during the school day. So that's one way of doing it. In Miami, it was 2 elementary schools. They have a very small French program, and they wanted the extra French after school outside of the academic time. So we are working with them to start an after-school program in 2 of the schools. So we come in with funding for the teacher who's going to teach that class. And ideally, it's someone from the school who knows the students and who's French speaker, obviously. And we also share our resources, because there was a whole curriculum that was built in Miami and in Maine specifically for this program. So these are the different way of us, you know, helping you start a program. So you can just start by our website, and I'm gonna click. Screen sharing is paused. I have to share again just to show you. You can just go on a website, and you know, there's a history of the program. And we have a FHLP resources section. I'm going to put this link in the chat. So this is the website for the resources. And what we have done is put them in categories. You can recognize some of the AP themes, AP French themes. So if you're a high school student and you're working with your students on identity, for example, and we usually start by this unit, you can go in the Francophonie tab and you'll find, I'm just going to click to show you. And these are actual lesson plan that was used by our teacher. So in this case, it's New York, but there is an introductory lesson on La Francophonie, for example. It takes you to our Dropbox. And once again, since 2015, like I said, there's a lot of resources. So you can just go in and, you know, this is public information. We usually have whole sequences that last several lessons. This is the first class. That's not a good example. Let me go, for example. Okay, this is a map of the Francophonie that you can fill out. I'm going to go to identity and diversity, for example. And we have a whole sequence on identity and diversity with all the resources. So you see the lesson plans. When it's a video, it says it's a video. So these are self-portraits of people from different French-speaking countries. This is something that you can use in class. We also have a whole project on how to do a self-portrait, etc., etc. If you are elementary school teachers, how do I go back? Here we have an elementary school curriculum section here where we're sharing the curricula that were developed in Maine and in Miami and in New York. So same thing. If you go here, there's 4 sequences, but inside you have lessons for a whole semester. So it starts with Vivrons, let's live together. And this is specific to Maine. This is actually the curriculum that was used when we had the program. And I don't know if you can see, it's kind of small. Can you read? Yes?
It needs to be bigger.
I'm sorry?
C'est trop petit.
C'est petit, okay. Let me see if I can zoom in. It's still very small, I guess.
Very for sure.
Anyway, you can access all these resources if you go on on the website. There is really a lot of things, and oops, I am not sharing my here. Sorry. What's happening? I am trying to show my. Okay. I'm not sure why I can't share my screen anymore. If you have question while I'm talking, you can, okay, here. So the website was the first thing, the specific section about the resources. And like I said, at the individual level, at the school level, at the, you know, if you are a community center or a nonprofit working with French heritage speakers and you want to start a program, you can just send me an email and I'm going to put same thing. I'm going to put my email in the chat because this is a long email. And what I'll do is I'll send you a grant request form where we ask information about, you know, your school or your institution, the public that you're trying to serve, what kind of resources that you have. And obviously, unfortunately, we cannot finance all the institutions that want to start French heritage language programs in their communities, but we can definitely help. We usually like when there is a local partner that's involved, and but we're there to support. I also put down, oh, I wanted to put my email in the chat before I forget. facefoundation.org. So this is me. It's a small organization. You can also go to the website of the National Heritage Resource Center. We talked about it at the beginning. It's based at UCLA, and it's really the authority when it comes to research on the heritage speakers. Once again, a lot of that research is focused on Spanish. There is very few on French, but the population of French heritage speakers is growing, and I hope that more people are gonna write and publish some stuff about the teaching of French as a heritage language. There is also the Coalition of Heritage-Based Language School. It's just an organization that bring together all the heritage language teaching schools, community ones. So it's usually those Sunday school in all kind of language. And it's also a good resource for networking and just benchmarking and learning from each other. And we've been very active with that group as well. All right, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen and just wanna see if you guys have questions or remarques or things that you want me to clarify. Oui.
Merci beaucoup, Agnès. J'allais juste dire que oui, les écoles qui se trouvent dans la région Portland, c'est là surtout qu'il y a beaucoup d'Africains immigrants, donc heritage speakers, Portland, Deering, mais aussi, je crois, Westbrook, Biddeford, South Portland, Lewiston also. So I don't know. I'm surprised that none of those teachers are attending this today. Maybe they'll hopefully watch the recording if they know about it, you know. But yeah, it's a need. I mean, in Maine, it's a growing need. And as you know, Alliance Française has offered a class, but it hasn't started because we haven't found, I think we have 2 interested students. But as far as I know, we've actually postponed the starting of the class because it was supposed to start, I don't remember now, maybe last week or the week before, but at the time we had no one signed up, even though we did, like I sent a message to all the schools that I could think of that would have the need, you know, I let all the French teachers know about this, that we were offering a class, Alliance Française. and it was published in our the African newspaper that we have in Maine, Jumbo Africa. And so, I mean, we'll keep trying. I mean, one of the reasons I think is because the class is offered or was offered on Saturday morning, and some of the teachers got back to us and said a lot of the students are working on Saturday. So, you know, so oui, alors, bon, on s'est dit, ah oui, c'est vrai, on n'avait pas pensé à ça. Bon, il faudrait peut-être faire ça après les cours, alors du coup. Donc, bon, on va continuer à essayer à recruter des élèves et à partager l'information. On verra.
Oui. Ma question, c'est au sujet du AP, parce que nous, par exemple, nous essayons de faire un partenariat avec les high schools pour établir la possibilité d'avoir des crédits universitaires pour des cours. Alors ça, c'est pas AP, c'est différent. Et puis, moi, par exemple, si à Portland, ils pensent à faire quelque chose comme ça, on serait très intéressés à travailler avec eux, très intéressés. Mais ce n'est pas le AP. Et puis, je pense que, je ne sais pas, April, elle saura mieux que moi. J'ai l'impression qu'en général, le AP, on pense un peu moins à AP maintenant, non? Je pense qu'on va plutôt dans le sens de concurrent enrollment, mais moi, je suis préjugée pour ça, mais bon.
Mais il y a aussi le seal de biliteracy qui change l'environnement un peu.
Alors, à propos de... Alors, la première chose dont tu as déjà parlé, c'est la possibilité de donner à ces élèves d'aller prendre des cours à l'université, c'est ça, et d'obtenir des crédits?
Non, ils restent chez eux. C'est-à-dire, ce qui arrive, c'est qu'on coopère avec le ou la prof, puis on doit établir d'abord que la prof a le niveau nécessaire de français. Et puis, on collabore. C'est-à-dire, on n'a pas un curriculum, un plan d'études qu'on oblige à suivre, mais c'est un niveau de français. Nous, on mise aussi beaucoup sur la francophonie. On en parle souvent, et c'est quelque chose qui est très important dans notre programme. Et puis, si le cours à le niveau, et si le ou la prof a le niveau, eh bien, on établit les étudiants peuvent, ça devient à la fois un cours au lycée, puis un cours chez nous.
D'accord.
Ça s'appelle. Donc, ils étudient chez eux.
OK. Alors, à New York, ça s'appelle College Now. C'est un peu la même idée. Donc, des élèves qui suivent, voilà, une fois que la classe a été identifiée comme une classe de niveau.
C'est gratuit.
Oui, bah oui, ça c'est très important. Hein. Et c'est pour ça que notre programme existe et lève des fonds pour financer. L'idée, souvent, c'est que c'est une population qui ne peut pas aller payer un cours à l'Alliance française, aller dans une école privée bilingue, ou même aller prendre des cours quelque part. Donc, l'aspect gratuit est important. Oui, comme disait April, le Seal of Biliteracy, je trouve que c'est vraiment un extraordinaire moyen, relativement simple, de juste, pour les élèves qui ont déjà le niveau, de certifier ce niveau et de le formaliser et puis de leur permettre de célébrer leur bilinguisme. À New York, moi, pour l'instant, c'est tout ce qu'on fait. On identifie des élèves qui, on sait que s'ils passent l'Apple, ils vont avoir le niveau I5 ou A1, et il y en a un certain nombre, où à New York, il faut avoir un 4 à l'AP. Ce n'est pas la majorité de mes élèves, mais j'ai des élèves à qui je fais passer l'AP. Ils n'ont pas de classe AP. Hein. On les voit 1h30 par semaine. On leur fait passer l'AP après les avoir préparés 1h30 par semaine, et ils ont 3, 4 ou 5. Donc, et c'est là qu'il y a vraiment un problème d'accès et d'équité, parce que le capital linguistique, il est là. Ils n'ont juste pas les moyens de passer un examen qui va le formaliser. Donc, le Seal of Biliteracy dans le Maine, c'est pareil. Il faut, la PULP est un des examens qualifiants, je crois, ou l'AP d'ailleurs. Il n'y a même pas besoin de projet, parce qu'à New York, il y a un projet en plus à présenter. Quand c'est des élèves qui ont un niveau correct en anglais et qui sont comme ça bilingues, c'est vraiment dommage de ne pas leur faire passer. Et ça les motive, parce que dans le Maine, il me semble qu'ils obtiennent, il y a des crédits qui sont donnés pour le SEAL, n'est-ce pas?
Oui.
Oui. They can get a few college credit for acquiring the seal of biliteracy in Maine, correct?
At the University of Maine system campuses, each campus has its own way of determining how many credits will be awarded, but yes, that's correct.
Okay. And the other good thing with the AP class, beyond the fact that there's this prestige, and maybe that's something that needs to be gone because it's very elitist. But for the students who have a certain level, it's an exposure to college level classes. And unfortunately, it is not equitable, but it's a good way to expose them to this kind of, because once again, they're coming from a very different school system, and the American university system is very different. And we spend a lot of time just talking about, the format of the exam and the what they ask for the AP, all this reasoning and the high level thinking that they are able to do in French, but they cannot do in English because they're English learners. So just that aspect, I think it's really good for them. It gives them just a good exposure and preparation for college.
And yes, I have a question, which is thinking about how it may be difficult to get enough students in a certain place to run a program. Is there an option for there to be a virtual class that could bring together students from different places, sponsored by one organization, for example?
That's a very good question. That's one of the good things about the COVID. We came to realize that the online classes allow us to reach maybe more people. For the seal of biliteracy here in New York, because we have candidates in different schools, and because these kids are high schoolers, they're very busy, and it's very hard to get them all in the same place. We're doing an online seal of biliteracy preparation class where they come once a week, and we help them advance for their project. So they check in every week, and they work on their project. And we have them take the Apple online. There is a computer proctoring option. You can do it from home. They can do it over several days. It just really makes it easy and help us help more people access it. So we are also open to that. I actually like the idea of connecting French heritage speakers from different cities. There is no reason, if it's just an after-school program and we're just doing project, that we cannot have high schoolers from Maine join in a Zoom with high schoolers from New York. It's actually really neat, and it could be very powerful for them to feel connected that way. So that's, once again, this program is very, it's 15 years old, but it's changed all the time. We're adapting to the needs, and it's very hard to get these students because they have a lot going on. Like you said, Nathalie, a lot of our students work, and it's the conditions are not perfect, but we try to adapt. Oui, Claire.
Oui, alors moi, je pense que faudrait que ce soit pendant la journée, pas après. The kind of courses you're talking about.
You're talking about the virtual Zooms?
Oui, dans la journée, parce qu'il y a des questions de transport. Comment ils vont rentrer chez eux? C'est loin chez nous, il y a de la neige. Une fois le bus parti, n'est-ce pas? Donc.
Alors, est-ce que vous parlez de vos étudiants à l'université, là?
Non, je parle des étudiants
de lycéens.
High school et lycéens, oui. Alors, c'est pas évident qu'ils peuvent rester après
l'école, oui.
Ça dépend des lycées, oui. Moi, à mon lycée, les cours se terminent, le bus part à 2h25, mais il y a un late bus qui part à 4h30. Pour les élèves qui veulent rester pour utiliser la bibliothèque.
Pour le sport, oui.
Ouais, ou qui peuvent rester, qui veulent rester un peu plus longtemps pour travailler ensemble ou n'importe. Donc, il y a la possibilité, je crois que beaucoup de lycées font ça, je pense.
Ah oui.
Alors, à New York, quand on est après l'école, les élèves restent. Ils ont l'autorisation des parents, on leur fait signer une forme et ils restent parce qu'il n'y a pas de bus. De toute façon, ils rentrent en métro. Oui. Mais c'est différent. Il y a un lycée où c'est une classe, mais c'est parce que l'école a décidé de proposer l'AP à ses élèves. Donc, on a 2 périodes, 2 fois par semaine, mais là, c'est de 8h40 à 10h10. C'est un peu le scénario idéal, mais c'est plus l'exception que la règle, malheureusement. Cynthia, do you want to tell us who you are? And I don't know if you have questions. Welcome.
Bonjour, je m'appelle
Bonjour.
Cynthia Matthews et j'enseigne à Lewiston High School dans le Maine. Alors, j'ai, je suppose je peux dire beaucoup, mais j'ai quelques élèves qui parlent français comme première langue ou deuxième ou, je ne sais pas, troisième langue, qui vient pour la plupart de République démocratique de Congo. Et il y a quelques-unes de Djibouti, Burundi, Rwanda et une autre que j'ai...
Somalie?
Oui, il y a quelques-unes, oui. Et
Érythrée.
j'ai pensé que cet héritage, la classe de la langue d'héritage française était super intéressant. Je ne sais pas si j'ai des élèves qui s'intéressent, mais j'ai pensé que c'est une bonne idée. J'ai entendu ce programme pour assez longtemps et je sais qu'il y avait une à Augusta, je crois, avant. Et j'ai voulu apprendre un peu plus et désolée que j'étais en retard. J'ai parti de l'école et je suis venue ici à Panera. C'est derrière moi.
Pas de souci.
Le mur de Panera, mais j'ai voulu apprendre un petit peu plus au sujet de ce programme et comment est-ce qu'on peut faire, comment est-ce qu'on peut commencer plus de programmes comme ça dans le Maine, parce que je pense que c'est important du nord jusqu'au sud, mais c'est difficile. Je ne sais pas pourquoi c'est difficile, mais c'est comme ça ici dans l'État du Maine.
Oui.
On a beaucoup de bonnes idées et puis voilà.
Il
faut faire les choses.
And it's interesting you said, Nathalie, you know, you offered this class at the Alliance Française and you don't have enough students. I think it's so many different things, but that's the thing, and that's why the approach, the heritage approach, is so interesting. And because there is the intimidation, these students have some of them are traumatized by French classes, you know, and that's not just coming from Africa or Haiti. You know, a French class can feel very academic and strict and rigorous. When we find a way to make the connection with their culture and their identity, and we make them feel like they have something to bring, they're not just here to learn, their accent is fine, and we can talk about authors from their country, and we can talk about their culture, and we can talk about what it means to be in a different country and speak several languages. Then I think we have their ears, but we need to get a chance to talk to them, and we need to present it that way. I really think that's the angle. We're doing a wonderful project with Jean-Michel Dissart. He is a French cinematographer who made a documentary a few years ago called I Learn America. I don't know if you heard about it. He followed for a whole year young immigrants who recently arrived in the US. They're not Francophone, in an international high school. And he made this documentary, and he's now using it as a tool to start conversation about immigration. And we are doing this with our student in French. And it's amazing because the teaching of the language is a little bit in the background. We're talking about who they are. We're talking about their experience as immigrants, and they're doing it in French. And obviously it's a pretext to help them improve their French. But that's something I think that could be wonderful in Maine. And we did it virtually last year. We started in person in New York. I hope we can keep that. But I would share a few videos and the curriculum that we're starting. The curriculum exists in English. We started translating it and adapting it. And that could be a wonderful way for the students to all of a sudden say, hey, you know, it's not just going to a French class.
We're not going to test you on the subjunctive.
Exactly. I'm traumatized. So, you know, just getting together with other French speakers our age and who share, you know, the same reality as we are. We're talking about race. You know, we are Black, but that was not really part of our identity where we came from. But it is here in America. We are Black, but not Afro-American. And we're doing all of this in French. So I think there are different ways to kind of present this program beyond just saying it's a French class. So Cynthia, I put my email in the chat. I also put a link to a website where we compiled all the resources we have accumulated during
Can you put it in there again? Oh, never mind. Ça arrive. Okay.
Voilà. So please feel free to reach out. Like I said, I mean, with the high schoolers, this I Learn America program, and I'm also in contact with, I don't know if you know her, she's the world language department head at Portland High School, and Anne Dixon.
Yeah.
Ça me dit quelque chose, oui.
I met her when I came in Portland a few years ago, and we started talking about starting.
Deering, no?
Deering.
La Deering.
Deering or Portland?
Je ne suis pas certaine.
Oui.
C'est difficile parce qu'à Portland, il y a deux lycées, c'est Portland High School et Deering High School.
Oui.
Alors, on ne sait pas quelquefois lequel.
Yeah, but I met teachers from both, and I mean, I think she gave me a list. There was like 150 students across those two high schools, French speakers. In Lewiston, we historically worked with the elementary school, actually. Yeah, we had a program in 2 schools and in a community center, but nothing now. So,
That's bad.
Est-ce que c'est fini à cause de COVID?
Non, il y a eu un problème de financement à un moment. On avait en fait un part-time coordinator. Et ça aussi, c'est important. Il faut quelqu'un sur place, justement, qui fasse tout le travail.
Oui. Okay.
So, si vous connaissez des profs, parce qu'en fait, pour moi, la difficulté, c'est d'identifier les lycées, les écoles et les villes où il y a une forte communauté de francophones. Ça, c'est la première étape. Une fois qu'on a trouvé ces endroits, après, on peut commencer à...
Je pense que l'idée de faire ce cours virtuel, c'est une très bonne idée.
OK.
C'est Nathalie, toi qui as proposé ça. Je pense que c'est une très bonne idée.
L'Alliance française a décidé d'offrir un cours. Au départ, ça devait être sur place à Immigrant Welcome Center à Portland, le samedi matin, mais avec COVID, maintenant, ça va être sur Zoom. Mais en fait, on n'a que 2 personnes qui sont intéressées. Je ne sais même pas si elles se sont vraiment inscrites. Elles ont posé des questions et tout ça, mais je ne sais pas. Donc, ça n'a pas vraiment démarré.
Moi, ce que j'imagine, c'est d'avoir un cours. Si à USM, on s'intéressait, ce serait de faire un vrai cours qui se déroulerait au high school pendant ou après la journée. Puis ce serait pour des crédits universitaires. Et bon, ce serait à travers le programme Concurrent Enrollment, donc gratuit. Puis ça, j'ai en tête une prof, ce ne serait pas pour cette année, donc, mais j'ai en tête quelqu'un qui serait vraiment excellent, je pense, comme prof, si elle pourrait faire ça. Je ne sais pas si on pourrait, enfin, je ne sais pas, elle peut-être pas, mais ça, c'est vrai que c'est toujours le problème, mais ce serait intéressant pour nous que ce soit virtuel et puis que ça attire des jeunes heritage speakers un peu de Lewiston, un peu de Portland, un peu de partout. Ce serait intéressant pour nous de faire ça.
Je ne sais pas si vous connaissez, moi je peux vous mettre en contact avec ces professeurs de lycée de Portland et de Deering, parce qu'il y a vraiment un groupe assez important de French speakers, parce que je pense que les crédits, et moi je me rends compte à l'expérience, ces jeunes, ces lycéens, quand on leur parle de français, ça les intéresse, mais il y a tellement d'autres choses. Il y a l'anglais, ils veulent travailler, mais quand on commence à dire... ça peut vous aider pour l'université et pour votre futur d'être bilingue. Là, tout d'un coup, ça les intéresse. Donc, un crédit à l'université, c'est très concret. C'est pour ça que moi, je leur parle beaucoup du CIL et de l'AP.
Oui, donc pour les écoles à identifier, moi, je dirais, comme je disais plus tôt, et Paul peut confirmer, toutes les écoles qui sont dans le sud, près de Portland, Portland, Westbrook, South Portland, Biddeford, peut-être même Kennebec, je ne sais pas, York. Non, pas York, je ne pense pas. Je ne sais pas, mais toutes les écoles dans le sud du Maine.
Oui, Lewiston, bien sûr.
Et Lewiston et même Auburn.
Et Dominic, c'est pas public.
Justement, un des élèves que nous avons qui veut faire la classe de l'Alliance, c'est un élève de Camden Martin de Saint-Dominique.
Ah, d'accord, OK.
Oui. Et donc, maintenant, comme ça va être sur Zoom, il peut le faire parce que l'élève, il habite à Lewiston-Auburn.
D'accord.
S'il va faire la classe. Donc, ça, c'est la bonne chose avec Zoom, c'est qu'on peut avoir des élèves un peu partout.
Oui.
Mais bon, d'un autre côté, il faut l'ordinateur, l'Internet, tout ça, quoi.
Mm.
Oui, c'est vrai, ça c'est un problème aussi peut-être. Merci, c'est super intéressant.
Bon, ben je vous remercie d'être là. J'espère que ça a été utile. N'hésitez pas à aller sur le site pour regarder les ressources. Claire, je peux te mettre en contact avec les lycées les contacts que j'ai au lycée de Portland et de Deering. Je pense que ça pourrait peut-être les intéresser.
Ça m'intéresse aussi. Ça
Oui.
m'intéresse aussi comme AATF et pour l'Alliance.
Oui, ben,
Oui.
on pourrait peut-être faire, je ne sais pas, quelle sorte de coopération entre différents organismes. J'aimerais bien, parce que, évidemment.
Oui, parce qu'on avait trouvé un prof en plus.
L'union fait la force, n'est-ce pas?
Comment?
On a trouvé un prof c'est un prof de français à Portland, le prof qu'on a trouvé pour faire le cours avec l'Alliance. C'est un prof justement congolais, je crois. Ouais, Alexis, je ne sais plus son nom de famille.
Ouais, mais je vois qui c'est, ouais. Je crois
on a trouvé un bon prof pour le faire, ce cours. Donc, c'est quand même dommage Donc, il faut continuer.
Bon, et je vous tiens au courant de nos activités. Je vous rajouterai sur notre newsletter.
Super.
Et si vous êtes intéressé un jour à peut-être réfléchir à ce programme qui s'appelle I Learn America, je pense que ça, c'est un programme qui peut être très chouette pour les lycéens. Voilà. Bon. April, thank you.
Thank you so much.
I don't want to take too much of your time.
No, not at all. It's wonderful to have you join us. I appreciate your time so much and all this great information about the program. And I hope that this is really just the start and that we'll be able to bring you back to Maine many times and that schools will begin really taking advantage of this incredible opportunity. Thank you again so very much.
Yes, thank you. Merci à toutes.
Merci.
Bonne soirée.
Enchanté de vous avoir rencontré, Agnès.
Oui, moi aussi. On reste en contact. Allez, au revoir.
Merci.
Au revoir.
C'était très intéressant.
Merci, au revoir.
Merci beaucoup.